WWE is on fire right now.
So WWE has had an absolutely killer 2024, both from a creative standpoint
I want him to come out here, Bruce Pritchard,
and a business one. You know how I know it had a good business year? Because Triple H has told us every opportunity he could.
The largest gate in domestic history.
50 carats of diamonds.
Yes, we know every gate is the largest one because you gouge your fans on ticket prices, man. All right, whoa. Sorry, I'll calm down. I will calm down. Breathe, Steven. With the new year right around the corner, there are still things I feel WWE could do better, and there are some things I'd like to see come and some things I'd like to see go. So let's dive into all the things I want to see changed in the WWE in 2025.
Are you ready?
Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to Wrestle Juice. Before we get started, let me ask you guys a quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and the notify bell, and if you like what you see by the end of the video, do me a solid. Hit that little thing that looks like a hand, a decapitated hand. With just the thumbs up here. Anyways, let's go ahead and dive into this list here because I got a bunch of stuff. First up, women's mid-card titles, whether they call it the Intercontinental Championship, United States Championship, both Raw and SmackDown, which are about to go back to 3 hours each show, they're gonna need more titles. Not quite AEW level titles, but they're gonna need a couple more. And these aren't the only ones that I'm gonna suggest. But for right now, we'll talk about the women. NXT has built, I should say, a massive, incredibly talented women's roster. A lot of those women are probably going to be called up to main roster in 2025 and 2026. So you got to figure, you got to relieve that pressure in terms of what to base your stories around. Right now, the way Triple H books the main titles, the world titles, even the current mid-card titles for the men, they don't change hands very often. And so you need something more for people to fight for. I know a lot of you might be saying, well, hold on a second. They really don't do a whole hell of a lot with the women's tag titles. And yeah, that's kind of a problem. They just need to put more creative energy into that, and they need to put more creative energy into the women's mid-card. On Monday Night Raw this past week, there was a 10-minute Sheamus versus Ludwig Kaiser match. We really don't need that match right now. Raw's women division basically comes down to Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan, and I don't know if that's going to change at all in the future, because right now Rhea Ripley's got to get past Raquel Rodriguez before she gets back to Liv Morgan, but the rest of the women have been kind of short-shrifted thanks to the move to 2 hours on Raw. Once it goes back to 3 hours, I have no doubt that you're going to be featuring a lot more women, but what are they going to be fighting over? The last time we saw, Pure Fusion Collection, the Party Girls, Damage Control, they're all sort of feuding over who's the top of the division. Well, nobody is if they don't have titles. You got to introduce these mid-card titles. There's a bunch of competitors, a bunch of wrestlers out there, like Naomi, who had a really good 2024, like Mia Yim, who had a killer 2024, that could use an infusion of mid-card titles to fight over and to win and to defend. So I want to see that first and foremost in 2025. By the way, the rest of this list, it's really in no particular order. I'm just throwing a bunch of shit at the wall to see what sticks. That's a metaphor. Don't take me literally. All right, this next one is such a small, superficial thing. I kind of debated over whether or not to put it on the list, but screw it, it's my list. NXT Takeovers need to return. I know right now they got premium live events, which by and large are named after old WCW and WWF pay-per-views, but I think the Takeover brand should return to symbolize that NXT is focusing on wrestling so much more. They're entering into the silver and black era on the CW. They're signing names that probably should be on main roster to show up in NXT at some point. For example, if they end up signing Ricky Starks, I kind of think that the dude should go to NXT before he goes to main roster after a couple of years. And they're entering into this new era where it seems like wrestling, once again, now that they've had 4 years to develop people from the 2.0 brand, wrestling is going to be a foundational piece of NXT. What better way to symbolize that than to bring back the Takeover brand? I don't think you need stuff like Halloween Havoc, No Mercy. I forget, what do they have over there? The Great American Bash? No, man, give me Takeover city name. Takeover Brooklyn. Takeover Philadelphia. Takeover Sacramento. That's what I want to see. Takeover Sacramento. All right, these next two, I'll probably get some pushback on. And I understand. And we're venturing into AEW title territory, but, oh, this is going to hurt. All right, hear me out. On SmackDown, I'd like to see a men's television title. Not before they do the women's mid-card title. That should come first. But a men's television title. And over on Raw, they need to bring back the ECW World title. Just hear me out. Just listen. Raw is the chaos brand, right? Adam Pearce is on Raw, barely holding things together. If the guy had hair, it would be gone by now, but he doesn't have hair. It's already gone. It's a mess. That show is amazing. It's got Bronson Reed crashing through everything. Braun Strowman's out there being crazy. Give me another title on Raw bereft of rules. Take this title to the extreme with extreme rules, which basically means everything is a no DQ match, or it could be a weapons match. It's all the same thing. Once you throw out no DQ, then you could do whatever you want, and then you can be a chairs match if you wanted. You can do whatever you want in these matches. I'm not advocating for unprotected chair shots to the head or an excess of bleeding. I think they can be a lot more creative than that. I think this Bronson Reed stuff really makes me think, man, how cool would it be if there was an entire division of pure chaos? And if there's one thing that I loved so much about ECW back in the day, it was the finishes to these matches were so all over the place because there were basically no rules. The ref was there just to count the 3. If 20 people come down and overbook this thing, fine. The crowd was going crazy. It was a ton of fun. But if there's gonna be a place for guys like Bronson Reed and Braun Strowman, and hopefully more on the Raw brand, if Raw is the chaos brand, then let's get a division of pure chaos. And that should be the ECW division. The name value alone, I think, would warrant exposure on television. And again, Raw is going to be 3 hours. You can get away with this. Over on the SmackDown side of things, because things are a bit more controlled there and Nick Aldis seems to have his shit together, bring us a TV title, a time limit title that's defended on every episode of SmackDown. And this can be the guys who actually can wrestle really, really good. Guys like Apollo Crews, Dragon Lee, those kind of guys who can compete and just like wow people with how good they are in the ring. And it's defended every time, and it's got a 15-minute time limit, similar to the TV title over in New Japan that Zack Sabre Jr. had for a while. And I don't follow New Japan, so I have no idea who has that title, but I do know Zack Sabre Jr. is their heavyweight champion right now, so that's awesome. Another men's title for SmackDown and another title for Raw. They're each going to be 3 hours. You can totally do this. Just trust me on this one. This video is brought to you by mfshophere.com, otherwise known as the place I'm selling the graphic novels I used to make before I made it on YouTube. That's right, before I became a pro wrestling YouTuber and podcaster, I failed at becoming a comic book artist. And here's the proof of that, now on sale at mfshophere.com. All right, let's talk about some fantasy booking. One thing I really want to see in 2025 is the end of the Bloodline saga. Right now, you got the good Bloodline. You got the bad Bloodline. This thing has the potential to go on for literal decades. I might retire from this deep into my 60s, maybe even my 70s, depending on how well I take care of myself, and the Bloodline saga could theoretically still be going. Solo Sikoa is only like 31 years old, 32 years old, something like that. If he continues to wrestle until he's 52 years old, which is entirely possible because that's how old Dwayne The Rock Johnson is. This could be lasting until I'm damn near 69 years old. And no, that's not nice. That is way too long. The Bloodline saga has been the most compelling piece of television in wrestling history. I stand by that. But 2025, with The Rock, the final boss, potentially coming back for another WrestleMania match, with Roman Reigns probably seemingly either on his way to an incredibly limited, maybe WrestleMania only schedule, it seems apropos that the Bloodline saga, which will be at the 5-year mark come next year, should come to an end. I'm not saying the Bloodline as a faction is going to be done with, because I think that it's smart to keep that going, and maybe you can reignite a Bloodline saga down the line, but the Bloodline as a faction can continue to feud with other groups. But right now it's all Bloodline all the time, and it trickles down through the shows, and it's really good. So you gotta end it on the note that you want to end it, not when it's dead and buried in the ground, which some people argue it already is. During 2024, most of it, we saw 2 main sagas, one play out on Raw, one play out on SmackDown. I was the Bloodline, and on Raw it was a Judgment Day. The Judgment Day stuff clearly has run out of steam, so you need a new top line A story. Now, what could that be? I got a couple ideas, but it'd be kind of interesting if they pulled some acts from the mid-card and elevated them to the main event scene. I'm talking about, for example, the Wyatt Six. I think there's so much lore and story possible for a Wyatt 6 saga that can last the entire year with Bo Dallas at the top, maybe vying for that world title. I think there's a lot you can do with that. Although I do have one other idea that could totally be a saga. I mentioned earlier, NXT is going to be bringing a lot of people to main roster in 2025. That's my belief. Why not give us a new Nexus? They have not done a great job of building up women competitors for Rhea Ripley. And as much as I know a lot of you would like to see it, I don't think she's going to enter the men's division. So you can put a bunch of the women in NXT together as a faction coming into main roster, and the head of that faction could be challenging Rhea Ripley. That probably end up being Roxanne Perez, because I would be shocked if she didn't get called up in 2025. But if you want to go an even heavier hitter than that, I would suggest Jordynne Grace leading. I know she just, and I don't know what her contract status is, but it wouldn't shock me if she was close to signing with WWE. I don't know exactly when her contract is up with TNA, but I think that shit is going to happen. So you have Jordynne Grace leading some of the women from NXT onto main roster. If there was one thing that old Nexus got right, it was that big debut, and then John Cena pretty much buried them, which I still think was probably a good idea, but that's neither here nor there. I'm going to get in trouble again for that one. But no, give me some of those great NXT women on the main roster as their own faction to finally be something to overwhelm Rhea Ripley. While we're talking about NXT, I'd love to see them go out on tour. When they did go out on tour for the beginning of the CW stuff, I thought it looked great. I thought it added a new dimension. And I think when you're able to bring in new fans or fans who haven't been to the product in a while, or they're new to NXT, I think it adds a different dynamic and a different energy. And it's something that I would love to see. And I think it'd be good for the brand. All right, here's a couple of smaller ones. Number one, you got to ditch the unmotivated camera. It is time. And I know a lot of people are like, wait, ditch the what? The unmotivated camera. This is when you got two people backstage talking to each other and the cameraman is right there.
Now, can we talk alone?
He's just right there filming them, and they're having a conversation that probably should be private.
Alone?
But is not, because they know that the cameraman's right there, because basically WWE is not a proper narrative show. It's more filmed like a sporting event, which is basically a live documentary. So this is what you do. You just reference TNA from, like, I don't know when it was, 2010, 9, 8, whatever.
Man, you ain't Big Pop. I'm the big bad booty.
When you have like camera people everywhere, but like they're a little further away and the people having these conversations are mic'd, but they don't really realize that they're being filmed. They're not focused on, oh my God, there's a camera right here. It makes more sense. It's more natural. And Triple H has flirted with this kind of thing. You see sometimes things happening in the background to get rid of that camera guy who's just there while they're having some deeply intimate conversations. It just sucks me out of it. I know for many of you, you're like, oh, I didn't even think about that. But now that I mentioned it, it's totally going to bug you too. Next one is a really simple one. They got to outsource their merch. WWE has a lot of bad merch. The one shirt this year that I thought they actually did a killer job with was the Street Trash shirt, which I think they were going to rename Judgment Day Street Trash, and they never did that, and they still just ended up wearing the shirts, which was hilarious. The shirts look amazing. They're so good. I don't know who did that, but have that guy be their creative director for merchandise and have them dictate what merch goes out, because all too often their merch just looks dog shit ugly. Let's outsource some merch. Let's do it AEW. You guys know AEW hired a bunch of artists to be part of their merch design team, and their merch looks like $1 million now. It looks great. So WWE should kind of do the same thing. Hire a bunch of really awesome artists. Don't use the AI art. Don't do that stuff, because that's not good. Hire a bunch of actual artists to make some really cool merchandise. Finally, this probably should be number one. Lower your fucking ticket prices. I don't know how is it even legal that Ticketmaster has this dynamic ticket pricing thing where one day a seat is $500 and the next day it's $1,500 based on demand? What is that shit? That is so horrible. That is so anti-fan. That is so like, hey guys, guess what? You want to come see us live? We're going to fuck you over. The problem is they keep on selling out everything, so people just go along with it. And I guess in a free market, that's just how it happens. But my God, it is pricing out so many fans of the product. It's a bummer. It's a real bummer. So anyways, yeah, those are things that I want to see from WWE in 2025. I'm sure I left out a lot of good stuff, and I'm sure you guys will load up the comments and let me know what you think about what you'd like to see changed in WWE in 2025. See you guys around.